When people think of Vikings, they imagine fearless warriors, endless feasts, glory in battle, and a life of freedom on the open sea. But the real truth about Viking life was far darker, harder, and far more brutal than the legends suggest. Behind the axes and longships was a world of hunger, fear, violence, and survival at the edge of the known world. This is the real story of how Vikings actually lived. Viking life began in one of the harshest environments in medieval Europe. Scandinavia was cold, rocky, and unforgiving. The soil was poor, farming was difficult, winters were long and deadly. Most Vikings were not warriors, they were farmers struggling to survive. A single failed harvest could mean starvation. Livestock deaths could destroy an entire family. Life expectancy was short, and survival was never guaranteed. Raiding was not about glory, it was about survival. From a young age, Viking children were prepared for hardship. There was no childhood as we know it today. Boys learned to fight early. Girls learned to manage homes, farms, and trade. Everyone worked. Children were expected to contribute or risk becoming a burden. Weakness was dangerous. Strength meant survival. By the time a Viking boy reached his teenage years, he already knew how to use weapons, sail ships, and endure pain. Despite the myths, Viking warriors did not live in constant battle. Fighting was rare, but when it happened, it was terrifying. There were no rules of war, no mercy, no protection for the wounded. Battles were chaotic, loud, and brutally short. A single blow could end a life. Injuries often meant death from infection. Armor was expensive. Most Vikings fought with little protection. A shield, an axe, and courage were often all they had. Viking society was violent even outside the battlefield. Disputes were settled through blood feuds. A single insult could spark generations of revenge killings. Justice was harsh and unforgiving. Punishments included exile, slavery, and execution. Being declared an outlaw meant anyone could kill you without consequence. There was no police force, no prisons as we know them. Order was maintained through fear, honor, and retaliation. Slavery was a central part of Viking life. Raids were not just about gold, they were about people. Men, women, and children were captured and sold as slaves across Europe and the Middle East. Slaves performed the hardest labor. They had no rights. Their lives belonged entirely to their owners. Even in Scandinavia, Viking households relied heavily on enslaved people to survive. Viking homes were not comfortable halls of luxury. They were dark, smoky longhouses. Entire families lived together with animals. Fire burned constantly, filling the air with smoke. Disease spread easily. Privacy did not exist. Hygiene was basic but essential. Despite myths, Vikings bathed more than many Europeans, but sickness was still common. Life was short, pain was normal, death was always near. Religion shaped every part of Viking life. The gods were not gentle protectors, they were demanding, dangerous, and unpredictable. Odin demanded wisdom and sacrifice, Thor demanded strength. Failure to honor the gods was believed to bring disaster. Death in battle was glorified because it promised entry to Valhalla, but dying peacefully offered no such reward. Fear of dying without honor drove many Vikings into battle, even when survival was unlikely. Women in Viking society had more rights than many medieval European women, but their lives were still harsh. They managed households, farms, and finances. They endured long absences while men raided or traded. They raised children alone in dangerous conditions. Divorce was possible, but survival without family support was difficult. Freedom existed, but it came at a cost. Old age was rare. Most Vikings died young, from disease, violence, or starvation. Those who survived into old age depended entirely on family. There were no safety nets, no mercy for those who could not work. Strength determined worth, survival determined honor. So what was Viking life really like? It was not endless glory. It was endurance. It was pain. It was constant struggle against nature, enemies, and each other. The Vikings were not monsters, but they were not heroes either.
They were people shaped by one of the harshest worlds medieval Europe had to offer. And it was this brutal life, more than any battle, that eventually pushed them to change, settle, trade, and abandon the path of endless raiding. The Viking Age was not built on glory, it was built on survival. And survival always comes at a cost.